The November 1st, 2018 meeting of the Mount Pleasant Planning Commission is called to order. Mr. Kane, would you please call roll?
Daly.
Here.
Friedrich.
Here.
Honig. Horgan.
Here.
Irwin.
Here.
Kostreva. Leash. Ortman.
Here.
Rise.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. The first item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes they would like to make to the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The motion passes. The second item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from the previous September meeting. Does anyone have any changes they would like to make to those minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. The next item on our agenda is the Zoning Board of Appeals report. Mr. Friedrich, you have the floor.
Thank you. In the past couple of months, we had two cases. The first involved a non-conforming sorority house who had made improvements to their property beyond regular maintenance. Because of the improvement of the property, they should have come before this body for a site plan review and a reduction in occupancy. Their argument was that they hadn't made any improvements, but had simply done needed upkeep and improved the safety of the building and grounds. The zoning board ruled that the patio in front of the house was not regular maintenance of the building and constituted an improvement, so the patio needed to be removed. In the second case, involving a downtown business who wanted to place a new sign on their building, the type of signage they wanted was not included in the zoning code, so they first wanted the zoning board to clarify what the definition of roof is in the new zoning code in relation to signage. We then also discussed what constituted a facade and finally what qualified as an awning. With both of these cases, I felt that with the new zoning code, we should make sure that every physical element that is mentioned in the code should also be defined somewhere in the code to minimize confusion and reduce the need for people to have to come to the zoning board for interpretations. Another element of that became evident in the second case was that there may be historical elements in some of the buildings in the old downtown area that aren't included in the zoning code, but may be desirable to keep simply for their historical significance. We did not allow the new sign at the new building. That's it.
Okay, do any members have any questions for Mr. Friedrich? Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda is public hearings. Our first hearing.
Madam Chair, we want to cover communications first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Communications, do we have any communications?
You do. You had 4 communications in your packet this evening, none on the dais tonight. We have a communication from Mr. Sullivan regarding his property on Bradley Street. We have a communication from Mr. Jakeway on a number of issues. And then we have 2 communications that were forwarded via the City Commission and the City Manager's Office, one from Mr. White about driveway standards and one from Mr. Olivieri about residential development standards.
Okay.
And that's it for tonight.
That's it for tonight. Okay. Okay, now I'll go back to public hearings. Our first hearing is SUP 1812 and SPR 189 at 915 East Broomfield. Mr. Kane, would you please introduce them?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as you mentioned, our first case tonight is a request from Isabella Community Credit Union to construct a new credit union building with drive-through at this location. The property in question is Zone CD4 General Urban with a future land use of urban residential. The current use, it is a vacant lot presently, and I'll provide some photos in a moment of the current site conditions. The site is just over a ½ acre in size. The property is located at the corner of East Broomfield Street and Evans Streets. This is just to the immediate east of the ABC Warehouse parking lot on Broomfield and just east of Mission Street. The use to the north is a dentist office. The properties immediately to the east are single-family homes. And to the south, there is a shopping center and also rooming dwellings. Future land use in the area is pretty mixed. We've got commercial, multiple residential, and urban residential. And we also have a mix of zoning districts in this case, both the subject property CD4 to the north, CD3 to the east, and CD5 to the west and south. Photograph on the screen shows the current conditions of the lot. This is looking from East Broomfield Street toward the north. You'll see it's sort of faint, but in the distance here, you can see the dentist office building that's located on the property to the north. The single-family homes that are adjacent to this property are located here to the right. And to the left, you can see the side and rear of the ABC warehouse building that's located at the corner of Broomfield and Mission. The second picture illustrates the current conditions looking down Evans Street toward the south, and you'll see there are rooming dwellings located here on the opposite side of Broomfield Road from the subject property. These rooming dwellings back to the Mount Pleasant Shopping Center, where Kmart was previously located. A facility, an establishment with a drive-through is subject to a special use permit in the CD4 zoning district. There are 4 special use criteria that must be met in order for a special use permit to be granted for such a facility in this district. This particular project does satisfy all 4 of those criteria, making it eligible for that special use permit. The project site plan is shown on the screen. You obviously have a copy of the site plan in your packets as well. You'll see that the proposal is to construct a new credit union facility. This building would be located at the street on Broomfield Street near the corner with Evans. As you may recall from the earlier map, the lot has a sort of an unusual configuration. It's considerably more narrow at Broomfield Street than it is at the northern end adjacent to the dentist office. The applicant's proposing to develop a 20-space parking lot on the north side of the building and to have a remote drive-through location, which will be located in the northwest corner of the property. Here are some conceptual elevations of the property. The elevations on the screen are at top, the north elevation. This would be the view from the parking lot toward the building looking south. The elevation on the bottom would be the elevation along Broomfield Street looking toward the north. The second set of elevations would be the ends of the building. So the top elevation is from Evans Street looking toward the east. And then the elevation at the bottom would be the elevation looking from the adjacent residential properties toward the west. In terms of the site plan review, this project conforms with most of the CD4 standards already. I have noted in staff's conditions of recommended conditions of approval a few items that will need to be addressed before final site plan approval can be granted. Those have all been wrapped into that staff recommendation, and we've discussed those with the applicant. The applicant's confident that we can address all of those conditions following tonight's public hearing.
Okay.
I apologize, my clicker is, for whatever reason, not loving it tonight. I already covered the parking. The proposal includes the the parking meets the design standards of parking under our zoning code. The number of bicycle parking spaces that are required have been shown. We're working with the applicant on a plan for the solid waste for the property that's not currently shown, but given the nature of the use, we're confident we can find room for that on the property in a way that meets code. We will be working with the applicant on the landscaping plan to make some additional changes to provide the appropriate screening between the parking area and Evans Street to meet code standards. And so with that, staff's recommendation is approval of the project, subject to the conditions that are included in your report. We do have representatives here from the architecture firm that worked on the project to answer any questions that you might have. And in the interim, I'd welcome any questions from the Planning Commission.
So any questions for Mr. Kane?
Yeah, I do have a quick question. Maybe I missed it, but you're talking about cross-access on the northern part of the property? Between streets, or what? Cross-access to where? What?
The cross-access would be to the property that's currently the dentist office. This would, at this point, just be unreciprocated cross-access so that cross-access could be provided in the future.
Okay, so it's just to the next property?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, at this time we invite the applicant to come forward.
Good evening. My name is Gregory Hoagland. Last name is spelled Hoogland. I am here representing the architecture firm Hooker & Young out of Grand Rapids in Muskegon. We are here on behalf of the property owners, Isabella Community Credit Union, two representatives of which are with me tonight. I am here to answer any questions or concerns that you may have about the design of this project. And we are quite confident that we can work with city staff to meet all of these conditions and recommendations that you have listed there. We have, since receiving the staff report, worked with our civil engineer to resolve all of these and have actually provided, created a revised site plan that delineates and names all of these conditions. So we'd like to say thank you to the city staff who has volunteered a lot of time to work with us in understanding the new zoning ordinance and the language therein. So we'd like to say thank you, and we're here to answer any of your questions. Thanks.
Okay. Any questions? No?
Who's the market?
The intended users of the project, sir? Maybe I could have the representatives from the Community Credit Union answer that.
If you could come forward to the mic for those that are at home, the 3 or 4, maybe more.
Our wide viewing audience.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, we have a broad-based membership, so we have about 15,000 members, and several of them come from the south or work near and around the university, and so that would be the intended audience, would be our existing and prospective members from those areas.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, do any members of the public wish to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion on this item?
Move to approve SUP 1812 and SPR 1809, subject to the following conditions. 1, the proposed building shall be made consistent with the roof pitch standards of the CD4 zoning district. 2, cross-access shall be provided to the north in accordance with section 154-412A23. 3, 4 bicycle parking spaces shall be provided meeting the specifications of the Planning and Community Development Department. 4, all solid waste containers shall be screened as required by the zoning ordinance. 5, a street screen shall be provided between the parking area and the drive-through canopy in Evans Street. 6, all site lighting shall conform to section 9613 of the Mount Pleasant City Code. And number 7, the applicant shall comply with the requirements of the divisions of Public Works and Public Safety.
Okay.
I'll second.
Seconded? Okay, do we have any discussion on the motion? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, like sign. The motion passes. Okay. Our second hearing is SUP 1813 and SPR 1811. That's at 1720 South Mission. Mr. Kane, want to introduce it?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we seem to have a recent pattern where we have multiple cases of the same nature, more or less at the same meeting. So our next case is another financial institution with drive-through. This one is located at 1720 South Mission Street. The property in question is zoned CD5 Urban Center with a couple special requirements associated: future land use of commercial / mission redevelopment overlay district. The current and prior use is as a shopping center and mixed use building, and the site is just a little bit over an acre. You'll recall that the Planning Commission reviewed this case several times in 2016 and 2017 in advance of the reconstruction as the Campus Commons development. And so this is that new Campus Commons building. You will note that on the aerial image and map in your packet and on the screen, the aerial image hasn't caught up with the redevelopment of the site. So this aerial image shows the two buildings that were previously located on the property. Immediately to the north of the subject property is Gordon Food Service. Immediately to the south of this property is McDonald's, which we saw earlier this year with their remodeling project. Immediately to the east is another shopping center, one that includes Tim Hortons and Firehouse Subs in the frontmost building. And immediately to the west is Central Michigan University's campus, most directly some university parking lots and the university's powerhouse. Zoning in general, with the exception of the university properties, is consistent with the subject property, that CD5 Urban Center District. Existing conditions on the site, so you're all, I'm sure, very familiar with the Campus Commons building. This is the view of that building from Mission Street looking toward the southwest. The applicant is the Architects Partnership. The proposed tenant here is Chase Bank. Chase Bank would be occupying the suite in this building that's located on the south end, so the opposite end of the building from Chipotle. The image now on the screen demonstrates the area where the drive-through is proposed. A drive-through was included in the original approval of this project. Basically, what the applicant is looking to do is to construct a covering over that drive-through, which in this case will be a drive-through ATM facility only, not a drive-through window or other customer service type window. This is the general location of where that drive-through canopy would be placed. Immediately to the left, you'll see the hedgerow. That hedgerow is on the McDonald's property. Like the last case, the drive-through establishments are subject to 4 criteria for a special use permit. One of those criteria, having to do with screening adjacent to certain zoning districts, does not apply because there is no adjacency to those zoning districts at this property. The other 3 requirements for a special use permit have been satisfied at this property in order to be eligible to get the special use permit. And looking at the site plan, as I mentioned, the applicant's looking to construct a canopy over a proposed drive-through ATM. It would be located in this general area. No other site changes are proposed with this project beyond the construction of the canopy and the associated groundwork that would go with installing the posts necessary to support the weight of the canopy. Here are some renderings of the proposed canopy. You'll see on the left, this is a closer view of what that canopy looks like from a plan view perspective, looking from the top down. You'll see that there's the 2 posts supporting the canopy structure, the drive-through ATM facility here on the left, and essentially a bypass lane to the right. So for folks who aren't intending to utilize the ATM but are trying to circulate the site, that would be their opportunity to do so on the southern end of that canopy. At the right, you'll just see an illustration of that from a more of a vertical view. So you'll see the existing building on the left, the proposed canopy structure here on the right. I can jump back to the earlier picture. You will see there is currently a small canopy across the side of the building. I can let the applicant speak to this in further detail, but my understanding from our conversations is that they're essentially looking to provide better screening of the ATM itself to enhance its usability for customers so that there's not any sun glare issues. And so you can actually see on this picture, it wasn't a particularly sunny day, that the current canopy is providing some shading of the ATM area, but certainly not in the area where the ATM is likely to be placed. In terms of the site plan review, the proposed canopy complies with all of the requirements of the CD5 zoning district, and as I mentioned, there are no other site changes proposed with the project. And so staff's recommending approval of the SUP and site plan subject to 2 conditions. 1, that the city's lighting code be met, and 2, that the applicant comply with the requirements of the Division of Public Works. We do have Mr. Tim Messick here representing the Architects Partnership, which is representing Chase Bank, to answer any questions, and I would welcome any questions from the Planning Commission as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. King?
Yeah, Jacob, could you go back to the screen? The photograph that you have of the front, it doesn't appear that that's very wide lane, and I can't really read what these widths are. So that it's an exterior lane that cars are, the intention is for them to be able to come from the back parking lot out to the front. Is that wide enough?
The lane is quite narrow. Both the lane for the drive-through or the ATM itself, as well as the bypass lane, they are both sub 10 feet. A typical parking space, it would be 9 feet wide, and you can't under our zoning code or past or present, but theoretically, their communities do have smaller parking width standards, so it is feasible to bypass that, and at the slow speeds, we would expect traffic to be traversing this area I'm confident it's not going to be an issue. I would also note that circulation on that southern edge of the building is not necessary for anyone. The front parking area at the site has access both to Central Drive, which is the new connector street to the north, as well as a driveway on the southern edge of the property at Mission Street. And the parking area at the rear actually has 2 driveways out to Central Drive that they can fully circulate with a 2-way pattern back to that. The property also, by virtue of the remodeling of McDonald's, has cross access to McDonald's as well, so that rear parking area offers another opportunity for ingress and egress beyond what was previously provided. So it's a great question. I think the applicant can probably speak more specifically about whether or not the layout will meet their needs, but it certainly satisfies the minimum requirements of our code.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay.
Yeah, I just have a question. Maybe the applicant knows the answer. It appears on the drawing there's a little bit of an overhang from the canopy, from the support pillars. And I don't know if anybody has measured this, and we have a letter from Mr. Keeler at the fire department, but is that wide enough to allow, or is that, can a fire truck get through there?
I don't believe it could, but Lieutenant Keeler indicated that the fire department, number one, they don't need access through there in order to meet their required access.
Okay.
And 2, he was confident that no fire equipment operator would drive through there anyway. It's just, even under current conditions, that's not where they would go in their normal practice.
So, but I mean, that has been looked at.
Absolutely. That was one of the major things we discussed before this application came forward, was to ensure that the fire department would maintain the access they need. That's a great question.
Are you too tight to even maneuver
Well, I mean,
into there?
well, if a car happens to catch fire under the canopy, they can still get to it from the front in the back parking lot.
Or McDonald's?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
fire department would be able to potentially access it from McDonald's as well, if should they need to. And they do have their FDCs located on the building, so if they do need to hook up a hose and get water from another location without utilizing the truck.
I was a little more concerned about, a fire in the parking lot itself, if it's.
Generally,
They can get to it, so.
Generally, the fire department's access concerns are most specifically directed to aerial access, because in those instances, they need to be close to the building and have a sufficient amount of room for the aerial truck, which is one of their larger vehicles.
Yeah.
And so they do have that here, and that in that scenario wouldn't come into play. But certainly, that was, like I said, one of our very first conversations was with Lieutenant Keeler to make sure that they were confident this didn't create any issues, and they were. So they're not commenting because they can't. They're not commenting because they're not concerned.
Okay. Any more questions? Done?
Mine could go either way.
Okay.
Students, this is going to be convenient for students. And it's going to be convenient at 11:30 at night. Some people are going to walk up to this thing, right? They're not going to just drive through. I mean, they're going to, I don't know if it's appropriate to be concerned about the kid standing there and the other one driving in.
I can address that concern along with some of the other concerns that were raised. My name is Tim Messick. I work with the Architects Partnership. We are the architect of record for Chase. With us tonight is also Terry Roswick, the deal coordinator and market director of real estate for Chase Bank. Appreciate your time tonight. And to address that most recent question, typically what we'll have is we'll have the through-wall ATM service at the drive-up, but we'll also have a walk-up ATM in a 24/7 vestibule. That'll require card access to get inside of the vestibule, so it's a fairly secure situation, and it's well lit and safe and secure. So they do have the ability to stand in the drive-through and utilize the exterior through-wall ATM, but more often than not, they're going to go into the vestibule if they're walking up.
Is there a sign next to the drive-up one that says don't do this?
Much like a McDonald's drive-through or any other bank drive-through, they have the ability to walk up and use that machine if they so choose. The convenience factor of the vestibule most often, just the security, and then it is air conditioned and heated. It's conditioned air, so we don't see that there's an issue with walk-ups at the drive-through.
Thank you.
Yep. To address some of the other concerns that were raised regarding the fire truck access, we did review that and worked with staff and the fire department, and we feel it's a safe condition with access on 3 sides of the building, along with the McDonald's parking lot next to us should the need arise. So we have addressed that and tried to design with that in mind, not further hampering the drive-through condition. It is for the lighting concerns from the sunshine to make sure that we have a covered condition, and then also from a weather standpoint, protecting the users from any weather that may be driven against the building, as well as lighting and safety at night. So it's going to be a well-lit area. For the width of the drive-through lanes, the 9-foot width does meet the industry standard for drive-through lanes, both for the ATM drive-through lane as well as the bypass lane. We have numerous locations throughout the Midwest that are exactly 9 foot that are consistent with what we're proposing here, and we have not experienced issues at those other sites. Okay. The interior branch will have full services inside as well, so it's not a deal window or deal drawer. So it's really, oh, thank you. So it's really a situation where it's the drive-up ATM services, and per what staff had mentioned, it is not a deal drawer, just to be confirmed.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant?
How tall is this thing? How tall?
The canopy, underside of the canopy is approximately 10 feet, which would allow for vehicular access, vans, cars. Box vans would not be able to go through. There is a notice of how high the canopy is to make sure that there's no immediate issues.
Thanks.
Okay. Do any members of the public wish to speak on this item? Okay. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve SUP 1813 and SPR 1811, subject to the following conditions. 1, all site lighting shall conform to Section 9613 of Mount Pleasant City Code. And number 2, the applicant shall comply with the requirements of the Division of Public Works.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our third hearing is SUP 1814, 1811 West Pickard. Mr. Kane?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our final public hearing this evening is a request for a short-term rental special use permit at this location. The property in question is Zone CD3L, which is our suburban large lot district. Future land use is urban residential. The current use of the property is as a single-family dwelling. Property owner is Madison Chapman, and the site area is 1/3 acre. The property is located on the city boundary, so the properties to the north and to the east of this property are located in the Charter Township of Union. The properties to the west and to the south are located in the city of Mount Pleasant and have the same zoning and future land use designations as the subject property. Immediately to the north, there is a medical office building and an office park that's located in the Charter Township. Immediately to the east, the property in the Charter Township is a single-family residential property with a residential zoning district designation under the township zoning ordinance. This subject property is located just to the west of Bradley Street on the south side of West Pickard Street. This is a view of the property looking from West Pickard Street toward the south. This is the front of the single-family dwelling. The property is located in the Bamber Woods neighborhood, if that is helpful in orienting the location of the property. The property to its east is located at the corner of Bradley Street and West Pickard Street. This is a view of the property from the rear. So this is from the backyard looking toward the north at the rear of the house, current conditions. You'll recall, we've had 3 of these cases in recent months. Short-term rentals are subject to a special use permit in the CD3L zoning district, and there are several criteria that those short-term rentals must meet in order to be eligible for that special use permit. Staff's review does find that the property is eligible for that special use permit so long as the Planning Commission is comfortable that condition number 1 has been met in this particular instance. And those criteria are outlined in your staff report. So with that, don't have much to offer on this one beyond staff's recommendation is approval of the special use permit subject to the requirements of the Division of Public Safety. In this case, that requirement is that the applicant secure a housing rental license as all short-term rentals are required to do so under the both the housing licensing code as well as the zoning ordinance. We do have the Chapmans here, the property owners and applicants, to answer any questions, and I would welcome questions from the Planning Commission as well.
Any questions for Jacob?
Yeah, Jacob, how is short-term rental defined?
A short-term rental is a property where the tenancy is expected to be 28 days or fewer. That's consistent with sort of national understanding of what short-term rentals are as compared to other rental types, and is also consistent with a variety of state legislation that's been proposed intermittently to regulate or prevent the regulation of short-term rentals by municipalities statewide. And so that does distinguish them from a traditional rental in the sense that the tenancy is expected to be short in duration. It also does distinguish them from a bed and breakfast. Those are subject to different criteria under the zoning ordinance, and there is an expectation of a different level of service provision for a bed and breakfast that a short-term rental is not necessarily providing. So, great question.
Any others?
Just an aside, I wonder who was in whose pocket to get themselves placed into Union Township in that little cubbyhole next to it.
Yeah, there's a number of interesting oddities in our municipal boundary, and
well, there's the one with the judge down High Street long ago, and so you got that narrow little thing, and it ends with a former judge's home.
Right. Right.
And that was the deal.
Okay,
I think Commissioner Rise may have had a question for me.
So just to clarify again, standard rentals don't come through the Planning Commission, only short-term rentals?
That's correct. And the reason short-term rentals are classified as a special use is because they have unique characteristics that are different from a long-term tenancy. For example, when you have a longer-term tenant may have more opportunity to become acclimated with the neighbors in the neighborhood. You may expect to see more traffic in and out of a short-term rental when someone's visiting and they're going on side trips and they're doing other things compared to a normal household. You may see more festivity associated with a short-term rental than with a typical tenant because they might be visiting town for a special event or something like that. And so this is an opportunity for the city to be aware that these short-term rentals exist in the community, and also to give us a mechanism to not only regulate them at the front end, but also to have a mechanism if there are issues with a particular short-term rental. A special use permit is revocable by the city, and so there's an opportunity if there are chronic problems for us to address them.
Thank you.
Okay, do we want to have the applicant come forward?
Good evening, I'm Madison Chapman, and I'm the property owner, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mrs. Chapman, what is your intention to use this property for as a short-term rental? Is it
For
Airbnb or something like that?
Yes, similar programs, yes.
Okay.
See from the paperwork here that you plan on living there
I do.
all the time, so, okay. It's not a case where you're gone for several months of the year and renting
No.
it? Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do any members of the public wish to speak on this issue? Okay. Do we have a motion on this item?
I motion that we approve SUP 1814, subject to the following conditions: that the applicant shall comply with the requirements of the Division of Public Safety.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone thinking differently? Okay, the motion passes. Okay, the next item on our agenda is public comment. Members of the public are invited to come forward and address the Planning Commission. We typically reserve this time for comments that are not related to a case being presented this evening. If you wish to speak, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. All right. Okay. Now we are, I'm lost.
Our staff report.
I think your staff report,
Staff
yeah.
report, yeah. We'll have to talk to the professors at CMU and get a public comment added to the requirement for class participation. Spice things up a little bit. So yeah, staff report this evening. In your packet, you have a administrative review update. There were 3 administrative approvals since our last meeting. The first was a site plan approval for 1701 Gopher Parkway. As you may have heard before the meeting when Commissioner Irwin asked the question, the Planning Commission did review and approve a site plan for that project at the end of 2017. Subsequently, the applicant made modifications to that property, including changes to the size of the proposed building addition and changes to the parking area. So that was submitted as a new site plan application. It was under the threshold. It was within the threshold for staff approval, and so it was processed and approved as a staff approved site plan in October. The second item on the administrative review report is for a parking area behind the building at 1500 West High Street. That is Mount Pleasant Rehab. That was also a project that had a previous staff approval on their site plan. I believe that a staff approval was in 2017 as well. The applicant did have indicate an interest in modifying that plan under the new code. The new code offered some potential favorable opportunities that the prior code did not offer them, and so they submitted a revised plan, which was approved also in October. And then our last project was for a change of use at 122 North Lansing. This changed the current single-family home to an office, and a limited number of improvements associated with that on the site were approved with that site plan in October. In terms of other staff items to report, I wanted to let you know that I'm planning to request a work session next month after the meeting. This assumes that we have a relatively light agenda. So if the agenda gets a little too lengthy, I may reserve the right to postpone that to January. But there are a number of things that I'd like to have an opportunity to discuss with you all. One being the master plan, and giving you all an update on next steps in that project, answer any questions you might have about that project, anticipating that we will be kicking that project off in early next year. The second item that I want to come back to you all and have a discussion is about both medical marijuana, since I would anticipate in the near future we'll begin seeing special use permit and site plan applications for medical marijuana facilities. So to circle back and prepare for that before those arrive, and also to potentially address recreational marijuana if that proposal on the November ballot passes. Just discuss at a high level what the implications of that might be for the city of Mount Pleasant, so that that's on your radar and we can begin to learn more over the next year. And finally, as we do every year, I want to begin discussing our 2019 work plan. Obviously, the master plan will be a significant component of your work plan and will keep all of us very busy. But we also want to address any other issues that we may have on that work plan, including any potential amendments to the new zoning ordinance that we may want to take under consideration and begin doing research on in 2019. So with that, that's staff's report, and I appreciate everybody's time tonight.
Okay, if there's no further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, like sign? Okay, we're done.